grew up in Mexico and also in Texas. My mother worked a very blue-collar situation. My family's always been that way. I went to school for the deaf in El Paso, Texas, and that was a culture shock for me, of course, going there. The school led to another school, the Texas School for the Deaf, and I was basically becoming an American boy. That Mexican part of me just didn't exist anymore, and my family was from a very strong religious background, Catholic and Baptist, and my stepfather is a really amazing man. I don't even know how he deals with my mother to this day, to be honest with you, but he's really amazing. And you know, we always got along really well. While I was at the school for the deaf, I realized that I sort of became very aggressive. And maybe I got this from my mom, I don't know, but I became very aggressive in the school. I was oppressed a lot, I felt like, and maybe this just came out this way. So in the school, I saw gay and lesbian students. People were very out and very open and very strong presence there. And I never really identified myself with any of them. I was attracted to certain people, but it really didn't make a big impact on me at that time when I was in school. So my mom, again, being the very strong Baptist woman that she is, and being very religious, we would often get into these arguments about, you know, me being deaf, and I'm feeling oppressed by you, Mom, because you're hearing, and you know, her wanting to be in this religious argument, and so on and so forth. So when it got very, very close to my final exams and time for my graduation, my very best friend and I sat down together, and he said, you know, we're going to be graduating soon, and there's you know, we've been in school together for a very long time. We're going to go away, and there's lots of gay and lesbian people. And he said, I don't know, maybe I'm one of them. I feel different. And I said, you know, I feel different too. I don't know what that is, but I feel different too. So we didn't say anything about it. We just kind of brushed it aside. And then another friend of ours came into the room that we were in and was all upset and crying and said, I think I'm very different. Something's going wrong. Something's not right. And I said, well, you know, we've already been talking about this, and we feel the same way. So they came and sat down and didn't really say anything more about it. And then, you know, a fourth friend came into the room and said, you know, and then just started crying and then left, and we didn't really say anything much about it. We wrote our tests. They came back. Their eyes were all red. They were upset. And I said, I think I'm gay. I think people hate me. And we were like, oh, well, you know, I don't know how we deal with the situation. We kind of were all in shock, and we said, well, we have feelings that we're very different too. And the person said, oh, okay. Didn't really say anything more about it. And the four of us never really talked about it much any other time. We graduated. We all went to college. And that's when I started to realize that I was seeing people, I was being aggressive, I was being out there, and I realized I was coming out. And that's what it was for me. So things went round and around, and a friend of mine, you know, I was trying to tell a friend of mine that if I tell my mother, she's going to pass out. I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to deal with this. And you maybe should lie to your family. I said, yeah, maybe I should. And I looked in the Bible and it says, do not lie. And I thought, oh, maybe I should tell them the truth. Maybe that's a good idea. That's what I should do. That's the excuse, and I should come out that way. So I was typing to my mom. This was before we had video relay. This was back when we had TTYs. And it was a special way to communicate on this little typewriter called the TTY. And so I'm communicating with my mom this way. And back and forth. Now, remember, my mother is from Mexico, so she's not a first language user of English. And I'm deaf, so English is not my first language. And we're communicating in English on this device. And I said, I need to tell you something, Mom. And I said, I'm gay. And I spaced it out in all capital letters. And my mom says to me, response was, well, I want you to stay in school. And I said, okay, well, I am going to stay in school. And she goes, yes, you are. That's very important. And if you have any problems, you let me know. And my husband, your stepfather, and I will support you. And so I said to my friends, I said, hey, come here, look at this conversation. And so I said, you understand, Mom? Yeah, I understand, fine. And so we'll talk more about it at Christmas. And I said, okay, that's fine. And my history is that my mom and I have always really butted heads on every single issue. So now I expected this to be a huge headbutt, and it wasn't. She didn't kick me out or anything. And I'm thinking, which is what I thought was going to happen. And so I'm telling my friends, I said, we hung up the phone, and I said, guess what? My mom said she accepts me, that I'm gay. And they're like, what? And I said, well, another friend of mine said, well, I was planning to maybe come over to your house because I was going to get kicked out of the house. That's what I expected from this conversation with my mom. It never happened. And my friend was really surprised too. And he said, there must have been a misunderstanding. And I said, no, I have the printout. Look, read the TTY paper. It showed them exactly what the conversation was. And they were all just as shocked. And I said, wow, you're lucky. And I didn't know what to say because I was totally opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting this big negative blowout. So time went on, and then I met this guy named Tien. We call him Tien. I called him Tien. I called him actually T. So I called to let my mom know that I was dating someone, and I just said, I'm dating T. She said, oh, that's great, that's great. And so I said, well, I'm thinking things are going along well, and something's still bothering me, something's not sitting right. So I got in touch with my family over time about school struggles and everything and so forth. And then we were getting, my friend T was going to be moving to another state, and I was very upset, distraught about this. And so I'm thinking I'm going to be single forever. I don't know what's going to happen. So I called my mom. I said, Mom, guess what? I'm off Thomas. We're not going to be together anymore. My mom says, well, maybe she's not good for you. And I said, no. I said, Mom, he is moving to another state. She said, no, you mean she. Her name is Tammy. And I said, no, it's Thomas. And my mom says, no, maybe you're confusing. It's Teresa, maybe. Is it Teresa? And I said, no, I said, she's giving me all these Spanish, Mexican names, and I said, no, I said, I told you, I'm gay. Remember the conversation we had last year? She said, yeah, you told me you're gay. And so she said, she's bad for you. This girl's bad for you. And I said, well, I decided to get in touch with, I said, this isn't working out. So I called the relay service, which was Spanish so I spoke through a relay person who spoke Spanish to my mom, and then she spoke Spanish and then typed a message back to me on TTY. So we're not speaking directly on TTYs anymore, it's going through the relay service. So I'm typing, and my mom says, why aren't you talking directly to me? And I said, Mom, I'm gay. I'm G-A-Y, I'm gay. And now it comes out in Spanish. And my mom comes, and she's very quiet, I think comes back on the device, and she says, you're a maricón? And I said, yeah, that's it, Mom. And so I think it took me a year and a half, and finally she realized what I was trying to tell her, and she had not realized it in that whole year and a half, that's what I was trying to say to her. So this was not very good. So now we were having the real coming out discussion, and we really got into an argument. And she started in with the Bible, and I said, well, the Bible says I shouldn't lie to you. And then we got into this biblical discussion and back and forth and an argument. And so we stopped talking for almost 3 years. That was the discussion. I only get in touch with her, because of my stepfather and my sister, because I couldn't really leave them out, just because my mom and I weren't getting along. And time went on, and then one day, my sister called and said, your dad is having an emergency, you have to call. So I said, all right, so my mom's having an emergency, you have to call. So I called and I said, is everything all right? And she says, why are you calling me? And I said, well, I'm calling to see if you're okay. Is there an accident or an emergency or what's going on? My mom says, no, we're fine. So then it hit me, and my mother at the same time too. This is my sister's way of trying to get us back together, to convince us to contact each other. So now we have. So my stepfather, who I didn't know was there, got on the phone too. And he decided to join the conversation. So he got on the third line, and so we're having this conversation on the phone. It's very quiet for a few minutes. And he says, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, how are you doing? And he said, well, I'm glad you're doing great. And so we have this cordial conversation, and I'm thinking to him, and I said, Mom's all rebellious about this religious thing, and why can't you deal with that? Because he says, well, my stepfather says to me, he says, well, this is your culture, and our culture is very different, and you need to be respectful of that. And the point is that you decided to break the whole family in two, and I said, that's not what I wanted to do. That's not where I was going with this. This isn't what I wanted. And so my stepfather and I really got into it a little bit, and he said that, he said things like, well, this is really destroying the family. This whole issue is destroying the family. And, you know, I knew when you went off to school, when you were in residential school for the deaf, that you were gay, and I didn't say anything about it. I knew all of this time. And so we basically had this issue on the phone for a while. I got in touch with my sister a little bit later, and then I got in touch with my mom again. And my stepfather called me and said, you don't have to, even though we disagree, you're still part of our family. We may not see eye to eye on this, but we don't distance you. We don't have to talk about it. We can just be family. So we don't talk about it in my family, but there's a sense of respect in my family. And they respect me and I respect them. And we disagree, but we have that sense of respect. And so I think, for me, cultural sensitivity and respect was much more important than who we decided that we were going to be and how we were going to deal with that. And so, you know, my coming out was a little bit of a raucous story between my mom, and it didn't really exist the first time I told her, but it did the second time. And we've come to terms with it, and that's where we are at this point.